A very good afternoon. Give us 2 seconds to get the today's person on the line. Namaskar, Brijesh ji.
Namaskar, Ganesh. How are you?
Absolutely fine. I will give some brief introductory remarks and then I'll engage with you on a chat for 1 hour.
Sure.
So I will start on behalf of InSync TV. A warm good afternoon to all the listeners of the Instagram Live. Like you would know, we have been engaging in a 1 hour chat, several stalwarts belonging to the Indian classical genre, both Hindustani, Carnatic, vocal, instrumental, and what have you. In that, today we have a slightly different perspective because classical music can survive and thrive if classical music instruments are available. So while classical music is important, it is equally important to have quality instruments for the classical musicians to play, not only to learn but also to excel on the platform. And in this sense, the classical instrument making occupies at the center stage for the evolution of the Indian classical music in this country. Now, as all of you would know, when you think of music, it is India, and when you think of classical music instruments, it is again India. Because the number of instruments that is made in this country is so huge in number. Hardly there is any other example in the world where a country could make, handle, practice and excel this kind of instruments. And broadly one could classify them into Hindustani musical instruments and then Carnatic musical instruments. And if our research is anywhere near accuracy, I would say while there are hundreds of instruments, there are roughly about 30 instruments which are extremely important. And this 30 instruments ensure that the concert scenario is kept live and constantly enriched, and hence the making of these 30 odd instruments is a constant process which has to happen. Now the peculiarity of the Indian classical musical instrument making is, unlike the other countries, unlike the Western countries or unlike the developed countries, where essentially musical instruments are made, with certain exceptions like say violin or what have you, most by and large they are machine made, where there are technical standards, there is a standard formula for ensuring quality, and there is a standard formula in terms of even the note and the pitch. They're all measured through external gadgets, and this is how an instrument is made to perfection. But let me tell you, while they are made to ornamental perfection, when it comes to musical perfection, it is the Indian classical music which takes center stage because they are all handcrafted. They are not made through machines. They are made by hand, and they are made with ordinary tools that are available in a normal workshop. And that makes it extremely challenging. But while it is challenging, it also ensures that every musical instrument has a life of its own. Now, the musical instrument is not just a technical gadget for you to handle. In the Indian understanding of music, the musical instruments are considered equal to, say, Saraswati or Ma, goddess, and it is treated with tremendous reverence. You would very often see that when the stalwarts mount the performance stage, they would touch their instrument and do it like this and take the Ashirwad of the Almighty before even they start touching the instrument or tuning the instrument. Now that itself establishes that musical instruments are taken with tremendous amount of reverence and they are considered as a living being. And that opens up a lot of challenges. One is the challenge related to the making itself. Second, the challenge making them to withstand certain rigors of logistics. For example, an instrument has to be properly protected with a casing or what have you, so that they can maintain their fidelity. The third and the recent challenge is logistics has become a very important matter. Now, whatever instrument, they have to now be carried to various countries and they have to be transported. And quite often the transportation is done not under your direct supervision. They are given to somebody and that somebody may or may not know the value of musical instruments. And hence, there are all the chances that that could be mishandled. So the logistics has opened up a new challenge to the instrument making. And so you have instrument making, then instrument making and its reasonable logistics, and third is, and the open new category is the instrument making and its logistics concerned with transportation to various countries. And the instrument making in India, like I said, has not been ensured with machines and a big factory or what have you. They have been left to the hands of ordinary craftsmen who make these instruments in small locations with very limited facilities. And possibly that is the reason why the instrument making is handled by certain families. And these families are extremely dedicated and passionate in instrument making, and they bring in standards of quality. They ensure that the instruments are good and nice to be played with. But that also means they have to constantly fund this activity, and that is where the real challenge has come. Now in India, there are maybe I could count about 12 to 15 families who are passionately engaged in instrument making. The first generation, the second generation, third generation, and in some places fourth generation. But they are all beset with one standard problem, and that standard problem is who's going to fund them? Because instrument making is not like an ordinary market where you can make, say, 100 and sell 100 at a price. So it doesn't happen that way. Now here, they are made to perfection with hands, and maybe you have made 100 instruments and the buyers buy only 10. So the question is, you are carrying an inventory for a long time of the balance 90 till such time it is sold, and by which time the technology has changed. For example, a normal 2-reed harmonium has now become 3-reed harmonium, and from 3-reed harmonium you have a different kind of a bellows, and then you have a coupler, then you have a scale changer. So it keeps on constantly evolving. Now all these things pose up a due challenge, because every time an instrument is made, they have to carry this large inventory. Now you have made the instrument in a particular style, and if it doesn't sell, there is no taking back. There is no buyback value. So the entire money that has been invested into that instrument making is completely locked up. So these are major challenges. I wanted that these problems which face the instrument makers should be opened up to the instrument, the classical music fraternity, so that they are aware, they are sensitized that just going to a shop and buying an instrument, it does not end there. They also have to ensure that the instrument makers are constantly protected. They are a part of the ecosystem because they are investing their hard-earned money. They have invested their hard-earned time. So the society at large should ensure that their livelihood is not affected just because we want to negotiate on the price and just go to a shop, buy it off and come back and then forget about them. So this aspect of sensitizing the society in terms of instrument making is something that Insync TV thought is extremely important. So today, my friends, we have Brijesh Bhargava, who's one of the leading instrument makers in India with multiple establishments handling the sales, and they are engaged in making, in sourcing, in selling, in maintaining, and all aspects of the instrument to be protected, whether it is ethnomusicology, whether it is folk music, whether it is classical music. Here is a family which has been dedicated in this trade for the last several years. I want Brijesh to tell us initially about the background of this Bhargava musicals.
Thank you, Ganeshji, for having me today in your program. And yes, Bhargava's Music is a family-run, family-owned, family-run business for the past close to 70 years. Wow. It was started by my uncle, Mr. Amarnath Bhargava and Rajeshwar Bhargava, ably supported by their brothers, my father, Mr. Govind Bhargava, and my uncle. And eventually, as everybody starts, these people started with their businesses from home, mainly distributing accessories and ethnic instruments. And gradually, we grew as time passed. We grew, opened up our first store in 1954 on SVP Road, Opera House. Mm-hmm. Subsequently, in 1964-65, we opened up another retail store in Kalba Devi. That was a golden era of our
classical music.
Especially for my father, because my father was extremely passionate and extremely fond of music, and that is what inclined him to start this business. And he had a lot of passion for instruments and for musicians and music lovers. So 1964-65, the Kalba Devi area was one of the golden periods in his life
Kalba Devi area in Mumbai.
in Mumbai.
All this happened in Mumbai. Yeah, yeah,
All this happened in Mumbai.
yeah.
And during that time, he had Ustad Amir Khan Sahab or Vilayat Khan Sahab or Ravi Shankar ji or Hari ji, Shiv ji, name, and people from all genres, whether it's classical musician or a qawwal or a ghazal singer, they were regular over there.
Even film orchestra. Even film orchestra.
Even film, all Bollywood musicians.
Yes, yes.
So the situation in those days with him was, if he had Amir Khan Sahab or Raees Khan Sahab or one of the musicians coming in, he would shut the store for the customers, and inside was going, music was the activity that was going on. So 1964-65, he spent a good amount of time dealing with these musicians, listening to them, their requirements, their individual needs of instruments. I would say there were musicians who had travel in those days was very, very difficult, with especially foreign travel. So musicians had extremely, how should I say, difficult requirements. Imagine if you had two people traveling, and if you have to carry two tanpuras to Europe or America, that would be an impossible task. Carrying one tanpura would have been a very impossible task in the 60s. So he came out with solutions where in one tanpura, two different musicians could manage with a simple modification and carry on. So yes, in the 60s, that's when he was there in Kalba Devi. He had a lot of musician friends, and that's about it. Subsequently, he started distribution of musical instruments all over the country, accessories from 60s to the 80s. I think we were one of the early ones who started manufacturing and sourcing violin parts and exporting them all over Europe and America in the early mid 70s. And then came 1983, when he came back to retail. So all this time between 65 to 80, he was busy with the commercial side of the business, expansion and all. And 83, he opened up our store in Hirapanna. And that's when he reconnected with all his friends. So again, the likes of who's who in the classical field or the ghazal field or the folk music or any Western music. So we came out with the store at Hirapanna Shopping Center at Haji Ali in Mumbai. And from there onwards, there was no looking back. Opened up a store in Bandra. Currently, we are there in Bandra, and serving the cause of musicians till date. So this is our...
Before we go ahead, a few more questions on the past, because the musicians are an extremely difficult people to satisfy when it comes to instrument playing, and they would possibly sit right through the day, maybe for 8 hours, 10 hours, before they made a decision to buy an instrument. That was the kind of level of dedication that they had. And they're very, very difficult to please, because, their requirements are so difficult to fall in line, and they are difficult to please. And also they had very, very personalized kind of needs, because every leading stalwart had his own requirement, because the musician also established a special identity for them. I have seen several musicians carrying, a certain brand, and they would say, no, this logo, I don't want it to be seen anywhere else. These kind of very, very personal choices. Maybe there is a peacock and they don't want that to be put on any other instrument. That had to be exclusively for them. So like this, they had a lot of personal requirements. Tell me, how did your predecessors handle all these personalized requirements? And which was the stage where you kind of stepped into the shoe, and how did that happen?
I'll tell you, it was not too difficult for him, for my father to really look into these things, because he was, see, if you like something and if you're passionate about doing that, nothing is very difficult. So it was never stressful for him. Musicians would come asking for, now say for example an instrument like sitar. Now
Yeah,
sitar, the tone is very subjective for any instrument.
true,
So
true.
like sitar, uh, a little bit of customization would happen in Javari. Now
Oh,
Javari is a process where you are filing the bridge, and
correct.
you come to a process where either you have a sharp tone or a round tone or a tone which is more towards the bass side. So he would ensure that the karigar is there and the artist is sitting at the store making sure that the jawari is done in front of him, and the final customization of his tone requirement is taken care of. So this was really, really not very, very difficult for him to do it for any musician, whether and for any instrument. Even if it was for a violin, I remember a couple of stories that he has told me where he had to travel maybe to Thane to Peter Pereira to take some advice from him. And but the thing was the passion. The passion was the key thing to getting things done for the musicians, and it was not very, very difficult. And we are more or less carrying out the same thing in today's time with our businesses. If there is a requirement of any customization, we are more than happy to do it, even if it's a little
Well,
out
I
of the
must
way.
say you're very humble, because I have seen people that while you are dedicated to your trade, but there is a commercial aspect to your time. Suppose you're spending 1 hour with a customer and you're spending 8 hours with a customer. There is a lot of difference, because your time is also money. So while your sense of dedication to the trade enables you to spend that kind of quality time with them and do the filing, and Jawari, you, like you said, you perfected the tone that they wanted. The frets were fixed at the proper places, and not that everyone wants the same. They all want it very different. So this tonal quality, ensuring the fidelity of that final tone. If sitar can have so many complications, so are many other instruments. For example, a harmonium tuning is an extremely
True,
difficult process, because those days you never had this small meter which showed you what is the frequency. So you had to
correct.
do it with your own knowledge, and very
Not
often that knowledge in the musicians could even be, sometimes it could be even wrong. Suppose you tell them, no, this is the right place, they might say, no, no, I don't want this. For example, those days when you said Kali Ek, the Kali Ek was a very personalized Kali Ek. I mean,
correct.
not all Kali Eks were the same. I mean, I have found 20 different harmoniums with 20 different locations for that Kali Ek, and it is only now that they have all got kind of standardized. So very often you
Standardized.
would find a customer that, no, this Kali Ek I wanted slightly on the upper level, which meant the entire read rows had to be redone. So these kind of complications were there. While a person could be dedicated, but when it comes to commercial timing, all this meant an extra lot of money. So I am very happy that your family and your predecessors were so committed to that trade that they never bothered about this time. They wanted to ensure that every musician coming into the shop goes back as a happy customer, and would ensure that they will come back to you.
True.
Now, that is possibly the reason why you could establish so many sales centers, because the customers want to come back to you again and again. So the customer has gone from, say, Kalbadevi area to down to Thane, they still want to connect with you. So they come to a nearby shop. Now, one
Absolutely.
is that, yeah. So one is that personal attention. But there are many other challenges in terms of sourcing the small items that are required to make an instrument. Can you tell us something about that?
Uh, Now, when it comes to, one thing that we have always missed about the process of making Indian instrument is the standardization. Now, this is something that we have to work upon. it was and it is still a little difficult process. If we have an order of say 50 sitars to be sent across to some country, it is not going to be that easy to make all the 50 more or less the same tonal quality.
True.
So spares, yes, because the process of making these instruments is still handmade,
Correct.
and being handmade, there is always going to be a difference in the tonal quality
A little
and
variation.
little variation,
Yeah.
and of course, but once we can establish a process, standardization, then I feel these things can be made a lot more easier and more consistent quality.
Well, I was in engagement with some government administrators, so to say, and this problem that the present instrument makers are facing in India. For example, number one, standardization; number two, sourcing; and number three, some, for want of a better word, I call it a laboratory, where all this could be tested and could be perfected. So these
Correct.
very, very fundamental requirements that the instrument makers, and when you analyze the instrument making scenario in India, they are almost made in every part of the country. It is not that they are just made in one geographical location. They are made throughout the country, and the requirements are very different. The climatic conditions are very different. So when you're talking of, say, for example, wood, the wood has so much different quality in these locations. And
Correct.
when it comes to the usage, again, today there is so much of variation in usage. Gone are the days when they were all open platforms. Today, they're all in AC auditoriums. So the temperature within the premises makes a lot of difference to these instruments because they're all natural material. So these changes, and it's a very dynamic situation. It is not that you have found a solution and that solution is okay for the next 50 years. No, it doesn't happen that way. So this Make in India program, which our Prime Minister has now launched, I have suggested to them that this Make in India should also include instrument making because they are very, very unique, very
Absolutely.
Indian oriented. So if the government is identifying some kind of a area, a geographical area where this kind of challenges could be handled, I have suggested that they must put up in place some kind of a standardization methodology, like you have Indian Standards Institution for various manufactured products, but you don't have them in India. So there is no benchmark. For example, if X sitar is costing, say, 50,000, why does a Y sitar cost 80,000? Now, there are reasons why they are costing, but there is no documentation in terms of why and what is the difference in the tonal quality. So someone needs to work on it, and someone needs to create some kind of a documentation for all this. And I have suggested to the government and to some of the institutions within the ministry that this aspect must be studied in detail. And the instrument makers who have been engaged in this as a family, now today, why should they always be feeling this pressure of funding it? Maybe there should be some kind of a neutral system where, there may be a cooperative bank. I don't know what. I mean, maybe there is a financial institution which will exclusively look at the financial needs, because your needs are also not static throughout the year. And sometimes when you make big numbers, you need a higher rate of fund. And by the time it is getting sold, then it is in trickles. So if you have invested, say, 10 lakh rupees in making instrument, that 10 lakh rupees is not going to come back to you together. So that 10 lakh might be, sometimes 50,000, sometimes for 1 lakh, sometimes 2 lakhs. So like that, there is a financial cost to the entire program of instrument making. So I have suggested to the ministry that there must be a team which is given this responsibility in terms of understanding the various needs. And it is an Indian, when you say Make in India, we have to ensure that the instruments which are made in India also are finding a place in that situation. So there is a need to make a musical map of the country so that we understand what instrument is made in which location, under what conditions, and if there is some kind of a standardization. And also I'm told, for example, when you make towel, which is in the Carnatic music, you need a certain kind of reed, you need a certain kind of grass with which you make that, the one which you hold in the mouth and play. Now that is not going now, it is gone out of circulation. So the government needs to fund, for example, a mridangam. You need a jackfruit tree, and that jackfruit tree cannot be planted today and it can be used tomorrow. There is a long gap by the time it becomes a full-fledged tree, and then you cut the branches and then you make. So there is a lead time of about 20, 30 years sometimes.
True.
So someone needs to plan them right in time and ensure that that constant supply is maintained. So these are very, very challenging areas. So I feel that all of us should join hands and sensitize the government also.
That is
So
a
your
very.
observation.
I have also of the very same opinion that this is a time when, with joint effort from the industry, from private institutions, and the government, a
Yeah.
joint effort will go a long way. And it's not just instrument making. You have to understand it's part of our culture also, music
True. Correct.
of India. So literally, like if you take out 30, 35 years from our history, apart from the IT industry, in the 60s and the 70s, we were more known as for our culture,
Yeah.
for our music. So if we need this to spread all over, then all these efforts will go a long way of spreading our music globally and making sure that our culture is spreading all over. So instrument making, if instrument making is a standardized process, then quantities can be met. If quantities can be met, then how should I say, a lot more concerts are happening. You are music education, our
Yeah.
Indian classical music education can go a long way with the help of the government and some private institutions. So yes, these efforts will go a long way in establishing the industry, in establishing the manufacturers. I'll tell you literally, I was in Miraj a week back, and I met a few sitar and tanpura manufacturers. The present generation is the only one which is now interested in continuing this work. So I was talking to them that another 10, 15 years, and then who's going to continue the work? People, the manufacturers said, ki, sir, our kids are just not interested in this. The karigars are not really, really interested in this. The reason being, A, we cannot afford to pay them as much as they want. And the amount of precision that we ask them, the amount of effort that is required to make a tanpura or a sitar is a lot more than going to a simple furniture making factory where you have to make tables and chairs, which is much more easier and more rewarding. So this is again, now it leads back to that discussion where we need a joint effort of making standardization of spares and the process of making the instrument, where semi-automation can play an important role. Right now, everything is handmade. But if it is semi-automated or at a later stage a completely automated process, things will be much, much better.
Well, just to tell you interestingly, I happened to be doing this interview in Pandharpur. I performed in the temple day before yesternight, and
Wow.
hence I'm still in Pandharpur and not
Are
very
it?
far from Miraj. And
Excellent.
I took a stroll in the shops which are selling, because Pandharpur is known for musical instruments.
Correct.
And I was stunned. I must confess this to you that I was stunned to see that the shops which were selling high quality instruments, like tanpuras and harmoniums and tablas and pakhawas, today are selling ordinary drums because they say they just can't afford. People don't buy, people don't pay the required money to make those quality instruments. Now, if that is the situation, who is going to ensure that the next generation of craftsmen or the karigar, like you say, they are all not interested in this because there is no money in this. They would rather, do something different and earn more money. And why would they dedicate that livelihood for somebody else's benefit? So there is a complete disconnect between the artists and the instrument makers. I mean, in the hinterland. I don't mean in the cities, but in the hinterland, the artists really don't meet them, and these people don't meet the artists. And it is only now that because of the InSync TV that they are constantly seeing the music in their own eyes, even if they are in a small village. So that kind of a connectivity is kind of artificially addressed at least through a television channel. Now they know that the nice tanpura that they make is seen on a concert platform and there's a big name handling that instrument. They feel very satisfied. So at
True.
least that level of a sense of gratitude to these craftsmen, not just engaging them in terms of money. We need to give them proper training. So you pick them some nice craftsmen from young age, give them a proper training, schooling, and what kind of a skill that they need to develop to make instruments. There should be a formal methodology to engage them, to give them this knowledge, and then put them in either semi automatic kind of a situation or whether they have to do it themselves. So that skill has to be developed. Now, all this time, it is only the families which are doing it. But there has to be some kind of an infrastructure building where these people find employment, they are given the training, and they will get some kind of a diploma or I don't know what, a graduate certificate or I don't know what. But all that has to be now addressed to some kind of a formal methodology to acknowledge their abilities and give them that sense of satisfaction, and then take them into the industry, and then they can grow by themselves. Unless this is done very quickly, what you say is absolutely right. Maybe this is the last generation which will engage into this trade, and after this they don't want to grow those gouts anymore because they say it's too complicated.
Yes, in this season, while I was there in Miraj, he shared this information that because of some unseasonal rain, there is no procurement of tumbas this year. So literally, the entire year of the next 10 to 12 months, they will only survive with the amount of tumbas that they have in their stocks right now. Otherwise, because of the unseasonal rain, everything was completely destroyed.
No, but this is very, very dangerous situation. Now, I don't think the artists are aware. Artists have no clue or they have no idea where it is made, what is the situation. Another 1 year you would have no market for tanpuras because you don't have tumbas anymore. So this kind of a very, very pronounced disconnect between the true segments of music industry is extremely dangerous. Now, the artists, yeah.
I would suggest it would be a very exciting thing for InSync to document a video of the art of making sitars and tanpuras. Trust me, when I saw the amount of effort that is required by these luthiers to make one single instrument, it is incredible. I'll tell you, it is incredible. And then these poor guys, they somehow manage to travel from Calcutta or from Banaras or from Miraj or from wherever they come with a lot of hardships, carrying them in the train, making sure that nothing goes wrong with these fragile instruments. And when store owners or musicians, they negotiate on pricing with them, I'll tell you, I made up my mind, never ever we would really negotiate on the pricing. But in fact, after being for so many years in the business, one thing I realized was the amount of hardship that goes in making of an instrument, and it's a process. I'll tell you, just drying of a tumba takes close to 3 weeks. When a tumba comes to them, it weighs 85 kilos, 80 to 85 kilos, and after it is dried, it comes barely less than a kilo. So just think about it. These kind of once the store owners or musicians, they know that this is the process and this is the difficulty that a luthier goes through in making a quality instrument, they will have a lot more respect, regards, and financial making sure that he is financially treated well. So
I completely agree.
I would request InSync to think about this project where document somebody maybe in Calcutta or in Miraj that effort of making these instruments. I took some pictures. I
completely agree with you. One thing that InSync TV has donned its cap, that we need to resolve. If we need good music, we need good musicians. But if we need good musicians, we need good music instrument makers. So it all starts with instrument making.
Absolutely.
And only then it can all survive. So while we have indeed made some documentaries, the documentaries are centered more towards the technical aspects of the instrument, not so much in terms of the human aspect, the social aspect. But I agree with you that yes, maybe we also need to reflect the social aspects, not just the instrument aspects, which stone, which wood, that is one aspect of the story, but the human story behind it. For example, we did a documentary on Morsing, which is made in Rajasthan. Now there are very, very poor village people. They do this, and throughout the night they smoke polluted air to ensure that you get the right tone. How unfortunate! I mean, the efforts are put in by one segment of the society, but the financial benefits accrue to another segment of the society, which are completely disconnected.
True,
So
absolutely.
we need to sensitize. Now you are an intermediate. For you, both are important. For
Absolutely.
you, the human aspect is very important because that is what gets you the instruments. And then for you, the performers are important because that is a market. So beyond a certain level, you can't antagonize both. You have to keep both of these segments happy. But what I'm trying to say is the efforts and the advantage accruing out of these efforts are completely in two different segments, and someone needs to sensitize. Because the
True.
instrument maker, suppose it is his tanpura which is seen on the concert platform, the public gaze where all ministers, everybody is sitting, Rasikas are sitting, how happy he would be to see that situation. But no, he has no clue where his instrument is being used. So today the situation is, once it has left his shop, he has no clue who is going to handle it, how is it being sold, to whom is it sold, where it is taken. There is no connectivity at all. So in fact, I had even suggested to one South Indian manufacturer that suppose you put a GPS chip into your instrument, you would at least know where your instrument is. So like you have smart TV, where you can put a GPS chip and it can tell you the location of that, and you can kind of identify where it is located. So I think we need to evolve on some kind of a adventurous idea where we are able to resolve this through technology. If we are able to resolve them, why not? Because if by scanning a QR code on the instrument, if the user is able to find out where it is made, who has sold him, what price was it sold, and what is the technical details of this, we can make a simple QR code. So these kind of value additions in terms of ensuring that the information is kind of embedded into the instrument would be an exciting addition to the instrument. And I recently, in fact, I must tell you this as a music forum chairman. Some 5-6 years back, we had organized a seminar at NCPA for a 3-day seminar where the main agenda was instrument making.
Yes,
but unfortunately, what happened? Most of the people who spoke were artists. They were not instrument makers. Because instrument makers does not have the ability, or for that matter, the knowledge to come to a place like NCPA and speak about his difficulties in instrument making to an educated audience. Sorry, he doesn't have that ability. Of course, some people had come from Miraj. Like that, several people had come from several locations. But they could not express their anguish. All that they had was, they received a nice certificate, they were so happy, they took a photograph outside NCPA and gone. But that was not the purpose. The purpose was to bring to the center stage the issues containing the instrument making, and that aspect unfortunately got lost. And there was another humorous side to it. When they got a certificate from the music forum, from the very next day in their shop, all the prices went up by 5%. And when somebody said, "Yeah, भाव बढ़ा दिया तुमने," बोला, "दे अभी देखो music forum का certificate है मेरे पास."
Wow.
So these kind of things also happen. I was quite happy. After all, 5% is nothing much. But what I'm trying to say is there has to be a connect between the two segments of music, classical music, the instrument making, as well as the artists, and at least to the extent of knowledge they must share. We must have once in a while meet or a conference or a seminar where all these segments of the instruments will mingle together and can exchange ideas or what have you. So we are working on towards that, and we do realize that a large leading shop like you, which is selling so many instruments today. But tell me, I'm slightly shifting the focus to another area now. Earlier times, most of the sales were centered towards standard Indian classical instruments which were performance related.
Correct.
But now I think the market has slightly shifted to more modern, Western, what can I say? A youngster wants to be seen with a guitar at his back. Whether he plays it or not is another matter. But he wants to have a guitar at his back. So it has become a fashion statement.
True.
It is not a genuine need. It has become a fashion statement that, say I'm also engaged in music. So I think there's a little artificiality into that area. Of course, it improves the market. In terms of numbers, you will do brisk business. But in terms of intense engagement, I think something is changing somewhere. Can you elaborate on this?
No, definitely we have seen a major shift in the last 20 years of people's choice of music and musical instruments. So, as what we used to sell way back in the 80s and the 90s, in the last 20 years, the sales of Western instruments is a lot more as compared to the ethnic instruments. Having said that, as you said, it looks more cool to carry a guitar or a ukulele on your back. So yes, it's partly to do with the cultural change, education, where we are more influenced towards the Western music. Maybe if I'm saying it correctly, but yes, there has been a major change, a drastic change in the purchase of Western instruments as compared to Indian instruments. And that's primarily because of the culture, the exposure. Today, the amount, if you log on, I'll tell you, it's not just that, apart from the cultural changes that we are seeing, but sometimes I also feel that if you want to learn guitar, and if you just type online, there will be enough of material available for you to start learning a guitar or a ukulele online. Whereas in our Indian music, it's just the opposite case. So even if you want to pick up a simpler instrument like a tabla or harmonium as compared to sitars or other string instruments, there are not enough of teachers and there is not enough of content online which helps you, quality content, which can help you learn and proceed further. The youngsters would, the first instinct is online. If they find something is interesting online, then the second stage can be offline. If they have spent 6 months with the instrument, say tabla, and they find it interesting, then of course they would explore and try to get in touch with a teacher who will be able to teach them one-to-one. Now come to the case of instruments like guitars or a ukulele or a keyboard. There is enough of content available, paid or free of cost, from very basic to kind of master classes online, and that is what makes the life of these kids, youngsters, amateurs a lot more easier. So yes,
Well, on the lighter side, don't mistake me, but on the lighter side, even behind you, I see a guitar hanging. I would have rather expected a sitar, but I see that you have put 3 guitars. So, that indicates the change in the approach to market. Of course, I will not blame anybody because after all, for you, it's a livelihood. So I have nobody to tell you what is right or what is wrong. But the fact is, the Indian instruments are very guru oriented. And there is an element of seriousness in Indian instrument playing, unlike the Western, where I'm not suggesting that, that there is no seriousness there, not at all. But all that I'm trying to say is it's very structured, it's very academic. Whereas when it comes to Indian instrument playing, I have discussed this with n number of performing artists. They say, sorry, this is not factory made. You can't just give online notes and people can learn. I mean, laya jab samjha nahi to table ka bol kya sikhega wo? So it is very difficult to put an online kind of a situation where your queries are handled by a computer and you are given a solution without realizing whether you are even ready for that solution. So there is a social, I would say, disharmony between the needs of the younger generation and what the earlier generation wants to offer them. So this very guru Sishya oriented kind of a situation. Of course, it is changing, but it is changing very slowly because I handle a very large institution like the Fine Arts Society where I have 2,000 students studying Indian classical music. So it's the same challenge that we face. We have now faculty members who teach the students, but when Corona happened, there was an artificial change. We had to shift to online, whether we liked it or not. And then it opened up a new aspect of music. So we could retain the interest of those youngsters by an online methodology. Not that it is the best solution. For example, some senior musicians would even scorn at institutional teaching. They say, no, this is what you are doing is also wrong. They would say, no, he should go to a guru and a single guru and he must learn there for 4 or 5 years. But the conservative musicians possibly do not realize that things are changing very fast, very rapidly in the society. So if the guru is not available, does it mean they will not play? So you have to give the next best solution where the institutions walk in. They provide the kind of structure which is not the same as guru, but at least it creates that interest in the students because instruments are available, nice rooms are available with modern facilities, and you are able to learn music in a reasonably good atmosphere. You don't, like, they used to say, I don't have to wash my guru's utensils, I don't have to wash his clothes. So the institutional teaching is some kind of a thing in between. So one has to sensitize. That is why I said, the classical musician fraternity should be sensitized with all these issues. And I, for one, certainly do not like, or for that matter, I am not an approver of this changing pattern from Indian classical music to the easier Western classical music. We must address this. We cannot run away from this situation. Because if this happens, maybe after 20 years, nobody will buy an Indian instrument. Number one, there is a problem on sourcing them. There is a problem on teaching them. There is a problem on learning them. So they would say, why the hell should I take it? So we have to address the system. We cannot run away from it anymore. Whether it is sitar, whether it is flute, whether it is tabla, whether it is harmonium, we have to find gurus. So I mentioned to you some time back about the musical map. Now I'm also trying to see whether I can populate these maps with the availability of the gurus in each location. So, for example, if you are living in Kandivali and you want to learn Hindustani vocal, you go through the GPS map done by the InSync TV. So it will tell you there are 4 gurus near Kandivali. So the 4 numbers are given, so you speak to them and try and. So I think in an artificial manner we will try to support all this. But like you have a funding requirement, I also have a funding requirement, except that we are a much larger requirement. You talk of a few crores, I would talk of 100 crores. Because that is the kind of money that goes into establishing a channel. Because today the channel business is a very, very expensive business. There are very few people who have come around and done a channel. We have done it. Because like your predecessors were passionate about instrument making, I was passionate about creating a platform for people to see music. So today we are very lucky, 30 million viewers are watching InSync TV, and just after I met you last time, the last week we are now available also on the Geo TV platform. So that has added another 10 million viewers throughout the country.
Wow.
So today people are seeing it, and like you rightly suggest, we are a vehicle, we are only a carrier. So we can carry these problems far and wide.
True.
Like you say, you can make a documentary. Yes, I will make a documentary so that more people can see it. If not anything, at least instrument makers will be happy that I have been seen on the TV.
Absolutely.
छोटे-छोटे आशा है उनका. They are not looking at becoming a big industrialist and all that. उनका मन में छोटा-छोटा एकदम छोटे आशे हैं. They have their expectations are very small. They see themselves on the TV. They'll be very, very pleased, and they will tell their children, see, all my hard work throughout the year, now see, I'm seen on the TV. So these kind of small allurements, we can do that. But coming back to your instrument making, we have gone through the funding aspect, we have gone through the Karigar aspect, we have gone through the standardization aspect. Now the next big thing that I want you to speak on is the market. What according to you is the market? Is the market growing? Is it shrinking? Or do you think there may not be a market after some years? Or what is your opinion?
No, I would say the market has been growing, and it has been growing pretty positively for the last 20 years. there has been a growth in the business. But yes, I would say, like every business, you have to change, you have to adapt to new technologies, new methods of doing business. A lot of stores are typically offline stores. They have not yet transformed themselves into the digital age. So there would be enough of people complaining about online business taking away part of their business. But at the same time, if you have adopted to the new methods of the business, then I would say it's a growth. Every year there is a growth in the business. And the positive thing is, I'll tell you, parents of the 60s or the 70s, if their child wanted to learn musical instrument in the 70s or the 80s, probably would get a spanking on his back saying that, oh, you need to study, you need to become a engineer or a chartered accountant or a doctor. But now it's just the reverse. Parents come and literally tell their children, please pick up an instrument. You need to take up
Super.
this as a hobby to start with. Just today morning, there was a child, and the mother was showing him various instruments. We were demonstrating a couple of, he must be hardly 8 years old. And the mother made sure that he picked up one instrument before they left the store.
Wow.
That's a very, very positive change that we have seen in the approach of the parents towards music. There are a couple of schools, not couple, but a lot of schools, private schools all over the country where music is more or less mandatory, more or less. They have to pick up some part of music as part of their extracurricular activities. And in that process, the market size has been growing.
I'm happy to share with you that I'm also engaged with the Indian Musicological Society. And
Wow.
sometime back, we created a compendium of universities and institutions in India engaged in classical music. There are about 60, 70 odd large establishments which are dedicated to Indian classical music. And my dream is to connect all of them in terms of sourcing for instruments. They may have a course, but they may not be able to ascertain, where would, say, for example, if they have to teach Santoor. So, if the instruments are not available, then the choice gets very restricted. It will again go back to, the same harmonium, tabla and all that, whereas there are other instruments. So you need santoor, you need sitar, you need sarod, you need basuri. So the choice can be wider if the platforms are available to offer them the solutions. So I'm also looking at whether InSync TV can act as a branding for some of the instrument makers to ensure that once you know, okay, this is InSync TV is related to this particular brand, then that stamping of credibility, because we are seen day in and day out. So people are willing to trust our brand. So in my mind, I'm working on a plan where we could try and connect all these institutions in the music related schools and what have you, to tell them, offer them online solutions.
True.
Now somebody might need for dance, they need the pile, the thing. So even that has gungru. So even that has to be sourced. Now, if there is an online facility where they can make an X amount of money and it can be sent to them by courier, I am sure the market will increase multifold. And then we would automatically address the solution about the numbers. So absolutely. I think online selling of instrument is something that we cannot run away from. We have to create a robust system in terms of selling, in terms of couriering, in terms of receiving the money, in terms of the payment responsibility, and most importantly, in terms of its maintainability. Because once the instrument is sold, it also has to be maintained. So you need a system who can kind of handle all this. So I think we have to work jointly on some of these initiatives and bring a 360-degree solution to the growing needs. But I'm extremely happy, Brijesh ji, when you said that you find that the parents today are telling their children to pick up at least an instrument or a vocal or a dance and what have you. That's a very, very encouraging statement. And I'm very happy because you are somebody who's connected to the market on a minute-to-minute basis. Some of us can give a speech on a stage, but we are not connected with the market on a minute-to-minute basis. Whereas Brijesh, you are connecting with the public, you are connecting with the aspiring musicians, you are connecting with these youngsters, you are connecting with these amateurs on a day-to-day basis. So you know what is happening, you know the moment. And I'm extremely happy that you are a little positive. I thought you were going to say, no, everything is going, terrible and all that. No, I'm going to play
not
this,
at all.
play this interview to many stalwarts and tell them, bhai, you're all wrong. Rajesh says the market is growing. So we need to tighten our belts and ensure that everything is done. Your opinion.
Absolutely.
And tell me a little about your present management. How do you handle all this? Because the uncles are not there anymore, your father is no more. So how are you handling the whole situation? And how do you plan for future? Are you trying to corporatize some of this thing? Or what is your view on this?
To be very honest, no, we are not really thinking of corporatizing it. The entire essence of what we have done is, so definitely not, but yes, expansion by all means, yes, would be a great thing. But as Bhargava's music, I still feel, we opened up a store some years back in Goregaon, and our experience was, when it came to buying guitar and keyboards, people were okay to walk into a Goregaon store and make their purchases. But all Indian musicians who were living in Borivali, Kandivali, Goregaon, that side, who was wanting to buy a tanpura or a harmonium or tabla, they would still feel a lot more comfortable traveling all the way to Bandra, because that personal connect has been there.
Absolutely.
And that personal connect brings you a lot of joy and satisfaction of doing the business.
True.
Now, I still feel that if you corporatize it a bit too much, then that whole vibe of personal touch is lost.
Personal connectivity will get lost.
Correct. And at some point, we need that human connection. We need that. And then, moreover, we are not like my father. When he asked me that, do you want to join this business? I said, yes, I would like to. So he said, then you would have to learn a few instruments. And then he made a statement. He said, I don't want you to be a box mover. I want you to be a reputed musical instrument dealer, whereby you should have knowledge about the manufacturing aspect, the tonal quality, and so that when somebody walks into your store to buy any instrument, you should be in a position to give a little bit of demonstration. And that helps you in procuring the right instrument and selling the right instrument. And probably that's what keeps us kicking. So our future plans is to continue what we are doing in a more enjoyable and a more graceful way.
I must share with you my own example and how I saw that sense of responsibility in your establishment. If you recall, I bought a box from a harmonium, one of the latest presentations, with a very nice modern looking lock. And I carried it to Delhi, and I was to perform at 9:30 in the morning the next day, which was a program at IGNCA in memory of Pandit Bhimsen Joshi on his 100th year. And at 8:30, I tried to open the box, and the box wouldn't open.
Oh.
So I made a video call to your karigar, and I said, sorry, the box is not opening, because there was no lock, there was no key. So there was no question of anything wrong with the mechanism. And we couldn't resolve. He says, no, there should be no problem. But it was not opening. The fact is, it was not opening. Then we showed that video on the WhatsApp video call around that place. And he said, there is a small thing which is protruding outside, which has got bent. So he said, you straighten it and it'll open. Now what would have happened is, when I submitted this box at the Bombay airport, because they found it was not locked, they kind of twisted that protruding portion so that it cannot open in the flight. But the fact was, at 8:30 in the night, where do I run for a puckard in a hotel, 5-star hotel, where I'm staying? And the next day morning, 8:30, the program had to happen. So we somehow managed, we brought some kind of a metal part, tried to push it, and then within 2 seconds it opened. So that small video call to your Karigar cleared the problem. But if imagine that we didn't have that facility, or if he didn't have your number, and the whole thing could have become a major problem. And for a performer, if his instrument is not available, he is gone.
Absolutely.
So it would have been a disaster. So I was so happy. Me and my wife were fiddling around, and fortunately she had your number. So immediately so what I'm trying to say is maintenance of the instrument is a challenge. So when somebody knows that 24/7, 365 days, there is a person available who understands what we are talking, who understands the need. So it's a great sense of satisfaction. He can, the price is not a problem here. The problem is that sense of, what shall I say, a trust that no, anytime I can call this person and he would offer me the solution. So that happened with Bhargava Musical, and I want people who are witnessing this interview, there are more than 1,000 people watching this interview now. So they will get a sense of trust, that yes, this brand we can trust, and 24/7, 365 days, there is one Brijesh Bhargava who is available, who can be even woken up at 2 o'clock in the night. If there is, I don't mean it literally, not that you're going to be woken up every night. But what I'm trying to say is, it is possible. If there is a major issue, if there is an emergency, yes, maybe you are available. So I want to tell the people that here is a person who understands the instruments that he sells, who charges you a reasonably good price, where he is happy, you are happy, the Karigar behind him are happy. And number 3, who is available for maintenance. And number 4, most importantly, a person who is willing to wear his thinking hat to offer more solutions to the industry. Absolutely. So Brijesh, I'm extremely happy today for having engaged with you on a casual chat. I always tell all the people that this is only a beginning. We have only connected today on a formal note, and this will continue. And maybe we would interview you on certain other aspects in times to come. So I'm extremely happy. If you want to make any concluding remarks, you're most welcome.
No, it was fantastic to meet you the other day when we met at the store, and when I learned about your work, and especially InSync, incredible. And I feel with the joint effort of like-minded people like you or various other people, we will be definitely able to make a positive impact on our industry, and which will be beneficial to the musicians, music lovers, everybody connected to the train. So it was wonderful speaking to you, sharing our thoughts, and I look forward to many more interactions like this.
Well, thank you very much, and wish you all the very best for your business, which will keep growing. And I'm very happy that you are a positive man who is willing to look at future with a positive bent of mind and not a frustrated bent of mind. So I'm very happy, Brijesh ji. Wish you all the very best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.